Welcome back to another video, and today I'm going to show you how to create massive guitar tones with your amp sims. Before we get into the video, if you would like for me to mix your music, shoot me an email at divinemotherstudios@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you with details of your project. Let's get into it. Now, what inspired this video was that I'm making a review of an amp sim, which is going to be coming out later this week. And when I was working on it, I came to the conclusion that I feel a lot of other people came to as well. And something that I struggled with when I first got into all of this was that there is way too many options. There is such an abundance of choices now that it leads to this paralysis that you're always on the fear of that you're going to miss out on the latest and greatest, or that you are spending hours tweaking guitar tone and you're never getting anything done. No music is being created. And you're just in your room all day, every day, tweaking guitar tones. Well, I'm here to tell you that that is actually the wrong approach. And that's something that I had to learn the hard way and ultimately strip down my process, where I'm only relying on maybe 2 or 3 good amp sims from here on out, getting me 99% of the guitar tones that I'm going to be using for the rest of my career. Now, the other problem to this is that aside from the option paralysis on the market side, is that we also have problems with the software side as well. And that is that we have way too many options to tweak within the software itself. I ran into this big problem when I had bias effects, or what was the other one from Positive Grid? It was bias amp. That's what it was. I mean, I don't even hear anyone using that shit anymore. And I have a feeling the reason you're not hearing anyone using it anymore is because there is way too many options. Like, can change like the tubes, the fucking transformer, just like everything. Like, it was way too crazy, way too much. And I remember just spending hours and hours and then tweaking, never getting anywhere. And that caused me to do a pendulum swing to the complete other direction, where I got plugins that were way too simple. And I just got stuck in preset land, and I would just kind of constantly always do presets, kind of playing Russian roulette with presets, figuring out, which is the best one for my mix or whatever. But because there were so many presets, that led me to go back to the same thing, which was, option overload, and having that fear that you haven't tried the right one that's going to get, the tone or the mix that you need. I got so sick and tired of dealing with these problems that I decided to find a middle ground for all of this. And the way I kind of found this was relying on some key principles that allowed me to finally just get the tones and just start working on music. And that was basically 3 things. 1, you have to start with a clear vision in mind of what the tone you want. There's something that I read when Necrophagus was recording Epitaph, that Muhammad, the main songwriter, had a particular vision for the guitar tone that they wanted, and that's what you got on Epitaph. Like, they didn't have amp sims back then, and he just used the amp that he had, which was some Ingle rack thing, and he knew the direction he wanted to go, and he went after it. And what did we get? We got one of the greatest death metal records of all time. It still stands the test of time with some of the best guitar tones that we have out there. And everyone still lauds the guitar tone on that record because he had a clear vision of what he wanted for that guitar tone and went with it. So that's key principle number 1. Start with a clear vision of what guitar tone you want. If you start with nothing, you're going to aim for nothing. But if you have something to aim for, you at least have a direction, and that's going to lead you to narrow down choices and eliminate choices, giving you a much more streamlined process. The other thing that I want to mention is the simplicity of the user interface. Let's just take a look at this interface here. It's super simple to use. It looks like a real amplifier. I love plugins that make it look like a real amplifier, because in real life, they're easy to use. You just go to your amp, you tweak. Do I want bass? Do I want mids? Do I want highs? Do I want gain? Do I want, more presence? Let's go to the stomp box section. Overdrive, pitch, compressor. I mean, it's just a simple, easy to use interface. If it's getting in the way of making music and crafting your guitar tones, it's a bad plugin in my opinion. And key principle number 3 is using presets as a starting point. Don't go all the way to the other side of the pendulum like I did, where you would only stick to presets, never tweaking them because you were too afraid to fall back into, option overload. But just kind of use them as a starting point. Go through maybe 1 or 2 or 3 maximum. Don't go through the whole laundry list. I mean, even this plugin, as much as I love it, has a shitload of presets. I mean, come on, that's like quite a bit, but this is nowhere near the amount that I've seen with other plugins. But just pick 1 or 2 or 3 to cycle through. Okay, that one gets me about 80 or 70% of the way there. And then from there, kind of tweak it and mold it to what you're looking for Again, though, while having that clear vision in mind of, okay, this is what I'm going to want out of my guitar tone. I guarantee if you guys take those 3 key principles, you guys will have a much easier time crafting guitar tones and not spend hours flailing around figuring out what to do. Now, a couple tips on actually how to pick an amp sim to buy or purchase. In my personal opinion, I think it's highly relevant that you just pick amp sims that carry maybe 3 amps maximum, 4 amps maximum. And those amps should be tried and true metal amps. I work in the metal field, so that's what I would pick. Something with a tried and true clean tone, something with a tried and true mid gain tone, and something with a tried and true high gain tone. For me, that's going to be the Josh Middleton, anything from STL really, but honestly the Josh Middleton, because this has a Mesa Boogie, this has a 5150, and it has the PV Triple X. It has a sick clean tone, it has a sick high gain tone, and it has a sick mid gain tone. And just leave it at that. You don't need amp sims that have 1,550 million fucking amps to choose from. If you're just starting out, that's going to lead you down the bad road of analysis by paralysis, and you're just going to get stuck in option overload again. Ones that I personally recommend to purchase would be the STL Tonality from Josh Middleton, the STL Tone Hub, just like the basic one, and the MLC Sub-Zero by Bogren Digital. They sound great. They're the most realistic sounding ones in my opinion, and all 3 of them have really simplistic user interfaces. So let's just take a quick listen to this guitar tone that I've made for this client. This is a song I mixed a couple months ago, and he had a specific direction that he wanted for that guitar tone. He wanted big, huge, and thick. So he decided to go with quad tracking to add that bigness in the thickness. And to make it sound huge, I actually blended 2 different amplifiers. So let's just take a quick listen to that. So how did I achieve this guitar tone? Well, I am blending 2 amplifiers, a 5150 and a Mesa Boogie triple rectifier. Cool thing is that this plugin that I chose, the STL Tonality with Josh Middleton, has those 2 amplifiers right away. So when the client had told me he wanted big, thick, and huge, I knew right away that I was going to use a triple rectifier and some kind of blend with the 5150. The triple rectifier is where I'm going to get a lot of that big and thick low end, and I wanted a lot more of the mid-range from the 5150. And ultimately, they are just being blended in with one another. So let's go ahead and start with the 5150. Well, ultimately, like I said in the beginning of the video, I started with a preset, so amp 1 rhythm 4. It got me to the mid-range that I was looking for, but then I went in here and just tweaked a little bit of the tone here on the overdrive. The balance was right up the middle, if I remember correctly. I pushed up the volume on the overdrive pedal to push the amp a little bit harder. I left the low end alone and I left the mid-range alone, but the highs were a little low. I think they were around 3 or 4. So I kind of just decided to push them up around 5, a little bit, add a little bit more high end on there. And then I cranked the presence and I cranked the resonance, and that was pretty much it. On the cabinet side for the 5150, I am going with a Mesa Boogie Vintage V30 cabinet. And now I highly recommend just starting with 1 microphone to get you 90% of the way there before adding any additional microphones. As you can see here, I have 2 different microphones running. I have an SM57 and a 421, and most of it is going to be coming from the 57, which is 80%, and only about 20% is going to be on the 421. So if I just slide this all the way over, it's not going to make a totally big difference in the tone. The 421 is just adding some texture and some weird grittiness. So for me, that's all I needed and wanted out of the 5150. Moving on to the triple rectifier. This is the bread and butter of this guitar tone. This sucker has tons of low end and tons of that gritty high end that I wanted to get out of it. So again, I started with a preset amp rhythm guitar 1, and I kind of just tweaked from there. I did classic settings this time, you know, a little bit of drive on the overdrive, a little bit pushing the amp forward with the volume here, and actually pushing the tone up because the triple rectifier is a pretty scooped amplifier. So I pushed the tone up to introduce a little bit more mids on the front end. I went with the red channel here. And I am actually lowering the bass a little bit. There's a lot of low end on this already, so I needed to take some of it out. And then I reduced some of the mid-range here because I'm not looking to add the mids from the triple rectifier here. I am adding them mostly with the 5150, but I wanted the high end of the triple rectifier, so I went ahead and added a lot of presence and treble here. As you can see, the presence is right up the middle, and the treble is right around 7 to 8 o'clock. On the cabinet side of things, I kind of just did the same thing. I wanted the cabinets to stay the same, just the heads of the amplifiers to be different. So I kept it with the same settings. Mesa Boogie V30 cabinet. So 71% of the tone is going to be the SM57, and then 29% is going to be the Sennheiser 421. And that is it. I am then just going ahead and blending it. The 5150 is going to be the primary tone, and I just brought up the faders and kind of blended them together until they sounded right to my ears. That sounds absolutely massive, thick, heavy, gritty. You know, starting with that end in mind, like I stated in the beginning of the video, if I hadn't been given an ending point or come up with one on my own, you know, it would have been very difficult to land where I landed with this guitar tone. Let's go ahead and actually A/B that in the mix as well. I'm gonna mute and unmute the triple rectifier, just leaving the 5150 alone, and then I'm gonna pop it back in as the mix is playing. So I really hope you guys were able to hear the difference there, especially when I started adding the triple rectifier in there. It made a really big difference in the guitar tone, and I don't think I would have been able to just get there with just using one single amplifier. I had to use two different ones. So just to summarize everything that we just covered here, the key principles here to crafting larger than life guitar tones with just amp simulators is you need to have a clearly defined vision for what that guitar tone is and what you are going for. The second thing is to have simplicity in your amp choices and in your user interface and in the overall software of your choice. You don't want the software to be getting in your way, and you don't want to be stuck tweaking hours and hours on end. And lastly, don't be afraid to use presets as a starting point, but again, they are just a starting point, not the be all end all. Use them as a starting point just to get to where you need about 80 to 90% of the way there, and then tweak the rest of your way there, finishing off with the last 20 to 10% that you need to get to the guitar tone that you envisioned. So I highly encourage you guys to try this methodology out with your current amp sims and see how that works for you. Leave me a comment. I'd like to see how that experiment worked. If you like this video, give me a like, comment, and subscribe. I'd appreciate it, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.